The war of words over heroism in war. Donald Trump doubles down on criticism of John McCain as he mocks calls for him to leave the presidential race. This is Special Report. Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Bret Baier. One spent 5 years as a prisoner of war and was the Republican presidential nominee in 2008. The other has spent a lifetime making a lot of money, got a lot of attention along the way, and now wants to be the Republican presidential nominee in 2016. Donald Trump remains defiant and unapologetic tonight in his criticism of Senator John McCain. And he also remains the leader. In the latest ABC News Washington Post poll out tonight, Trump has 24% support. Scott Walker is next at 13. Jeb Bush has 12. We should point out, according to this poll, Trump's numbers fell significantly on the last day in the field, Sunday, after his comments in Iowa. Chief political correspondent Carl Cameron tells us how the Donald is throwing more gas on the fire.
I'm saying that John McCain has done a horrible job. The VA is a scandalous, corrupt organization. It's a disgrace the way it's being run, and the veterans of this country are suffering.
Donald Trump, after his weekend shot at Senator John McCain, a decorated Vietnam veteran who spent 5 years in a POW camp, refused to apologize for the firestorm caused by this line.
He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Do you agree with that?
He's a war hero because he was captured, okay? You can have, and I believe perhaps he's a war hero.
Today, McCain broadened Trump's insult.
Does Donald Trump owe you an apology?
No, I don't think so, but I think he may owe an apology to the families of those who have sacrificed in conflict and those who have undergone the prison experience in serving their country.
Trump's rivals pounced more harshly than they had on the businessman's rhetoric about illegal immigration.
Some people say that John McCain's not an American hero. I say John McCain and everybody like him is an American hero.
Until Mr. Trump apologizes directly to John McCain and also to the veterans of this country, I don't think he has the character or the temperament to hold the highest position in this country.
It's not just absurd, it's offensive, it's ridiculous, and I do think it is a disqualifier as Commander-in-Chief.
Even the White House weighed in.
There's no denying that Senator McCain's service to the country is extraordinary and qualifies him as a hero.
Trump combined his illegal immigration controversy with his whack on McCain in a tweet today, quote, "We will soon be at a point with our incompetent politicians where we'll be treating illegal immigrants better than our veterans." A new Iowa poll conducted in part as Trump made his comments did not see any resulting change in support for him. He still placed second behind Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. Meanwhile, Trump refuses to rule out a third-party candidacy if his popularity on the right wanes.
No. I won't go on record as saying that.
Even Hillary Clinton and John Kerry are coming to John McCain's defense, and he is not backing down in any way, shape, or form. He'll be on the O'Reilly Factor just 2 hours from now, Brett.
Carl Cameron. Carl, thanks. Well, what do you think? Do you think Trump should drop out of the presidential race, make an apology over his comments about McCain? Let me know at facebook.com/BretBaierSR or on Twitter @BretBaer, and you can use the hashtag Special Report. We'll also see what presidential candidate Rick Santorum thinks when he joins us later in the show for our Center Seat segment. We may use some of your comments. President Obama met today with the new president of Nigeria, which is engaged in a brutal fight against Islamic extremism. Nigeria is seeking additional American help in fighting Boko Haram. The terror group killed at least 15 people Friday in suicide bombings. The United Nations Security Council has given a unanimous stamp of approval to the nuclear deal between Iran and 6 world powers, including the U.S. But there is far less agreement on the substance and the specifics here in the U.S. and elsewhere in the Middle East. Correspondent Kevin Corke is at the White House tonight.
Thank you very much.
Mere minutes into his Oval Office welcome of Nigeria's new president, President Obama turned his attention to another country, Iran, and the nuclear deal he says has earned worldwide approval.
Not just among the international community, but also among experts in nuclear proliferation. And my working assumption is that Congress will pay attention to that broad-based consensus.
The consensus the president was talking about was a 15-0 vote in the United Nations Security Council that creates the basis for international sanctions relief for Iran.
Although we don't see this unity enough here at the UN, the countries of the United Nations did largely unite behind the cause of preventing nuclear proliferation in Iran.
Unity at the UN, perhaps, but certainly not with Israel, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the deal historically bad, even as Defense Secretary Ash Carter tried to reassure America's closest ally in the region.
Friends can disagree about whether it will work, and we'll be watching Iran very closely to see.
They say this deal makes war more remote. This is not true. It makes war more imminent.
Another area of disagreement? Inspections, and just when and where Iran must grant access to its nuclear sites. Back in April, Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes said, quote, under this deal, you will have anywhere, anytime, 24/7 access as it relates to the nuclear facilities that Iran has. And Energy Secretary Ernie Moniz agreed, saying, quote, we expect to have anywhere, anytime access. But there's a catch. Listen carefully to White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest.
We have 24/7 continued monitoring of Iran's declared nuclear facilities. That's what was promised. That's exactly what was delivered in this final agreement.
Declared nuclear facilities, not military sites or undeclared sites. Access to those could still take weeks, and that's angered some lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
This idea of anytime, anywhere inspections have now gone away. It's not 24/7. It's now 24 days later after the request.
Meanwhile, Senators Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and former Senator Joe Lieberman embarked today on what they're calling the No Nukes for Iran tour, aimed at getting other congressional members to vote against the deal. Brett?
Kevin Cork live on the North Lawn. Kevin, thank you. ISIS terrorists are being blamed for an explosion in the Turkish city of Suruç. Turkish authorities say 28 people were killed and nearly 100 wounded. Suruç is just across the border from Kobani, Syria, the scene of fierce battles between ISIS militants and Kurdish fighters. Back here at home, a country that had long been considered a sponsor of terrorism is now back in the diplomatic fold. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen on the reopening of the Cuban embassy to the U.S.
For the first time since the Eisenhower era, Washington is host to the Cuban embassy, which raised the Cuban flag only hours after full diplomatic relations were restored with the U.S. How little the bilateral relationship is changing, however, was clear from the familiar demands pressed by Cuba's foreign minister.
Only the lifting of the economic, commercial, and financial blockade, which has caused so much harm and suffering to our people, the return of the occupied territory of Guantanamo, and the respect for Cuba's sovereignty will lend some meaning to the historic event that we are witnessing today.
In the pre-dawn hours, Cuba's flag also took its alphabetical place between Croatia and Cyprus in the State Department's Hall of Flags. Then Bruno Rodriguez became the first Cuban foreign minister welcomed at the State Department since 1958. Aide said Secretary of State Kerry delivered the same messages that Washington has long conveyed to the Castro regime about human rights, the return of fugitives from American justice, and Washington's intention to hold on to Guantanamo.
The process of fully normalizing relations between the United States and Cuba will go on. It may be long and complex, but along the way, we are sure to encounter a bump here and there, and moments even of frustration.
Kerry will travel to Havana on August 14th to raise the American flag above the embassy there. His aide said U.S. diplomats will enjoy greater freedom to travel inside Cuba than in the past, and that the Cuban people will enjoy greater access to Americans inside the embassy than in the past. Leading Republicans, joined by some Democrats, have pledged to block whomever is nominated as ambassador to Cuba, and have vowed never to lift the trade embargo as long as the Castros continue to hold power in Cuba.
No matter what steps we're able to take, it is undeniable that today is a sad day for U.S. national security interests and human rights around the world.
Now you can probably hear and see the celebration that is underway behind me outside the Cuban embassy. These folks are fervently pro-Castro demonstrators. They're very excited about today's developments. Secretary of State Kerry told reporters today that recent visitors to the island of Cuba have come back and told him there's a new sense of excitement on that island, and yet dissident groups report fresh arrests by the Castro regime just yesterday of more than 70 freedom activists, including women. Brett.
James Rosen outside the reopened Cuban embassy. James, thanks. Up next, inside the frightening mind of the Chattanooga massacre shooter. First News with some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 4 in Dallas with 2 people killed and several others injured in a wrong-way crash on Interstate 45. Authorities say a pickup truck was going northbound in the southbound lanes when it collided head-on with an SUV carrying a woman and 6 children. The SUV was then hit by 2 other vehicles. Both drivers died. Fox 5 in San Diego, where Saturday was the wettest day on record dating back to 1850. Of rain were collected from Saturday to Sunday evening from what was left of Hurricane Dolores. And this is a live look at steamy New York from Fox 5. The big story there tonight, extreme heat warnings for the tri-state area. Temperatures in the mid-90s and high humidity have a heat index of around 105 degrees. Those oppressive temperatures are being felt up and down the East Coast. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.